Hello, hello, peak performers. Hope everyone is having a great day, a great week, and that you are wrapping up a great first month of the year. So today I am continuing the conversation around habits. And many of you know that this is one of my favorite topics to talk about. So I tried to parse down all of the content that I wanted to share today so that it is digestible. But I have lots of great information for you today on habits. So if you are joining me live in the Facebook group, give me a hello. Let me know that you are here. There's a little bit of a delay, so I don't always see your comments right away, but I will continue to check them over the next couple of minutes. So if you have questions about habit building, if you have any success stories, or if you're having any challenges with creating and sticking to new habits, I would love to help you out. So this is the month where most people will set a resolution or will set their mind to doing things differently this year, to hitting goals, hitting new expectations. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what's actually the scientists know about human behavior as it relates to habit. And I'm going to give you a couple of hacks to help you truly accomplish what you set out to achieve in this new year. So if you joined me 2 weeks ago, I talked about I'll give you a quick little summary, but I would encourage you to go back and listen to it because there's just some really juicy content in there. We talked about the fact that in order to commit to a resolution, successfully build a new habit, whatever you want to call it, develop a new routine. It's not just about our action and our behavior. As a matter of fact, that is like fifth on the list of where you truly need to begin. So my training from 2 weeks ago was about the fact that you in order to succeed long term, the first step is truly changing what you believe about yourself, seeing yourself as that future version who has changed their diet, or who has become a runner, or who has become a disciplined entrepreneur. So it's really a matter of working on our mind first and our thoughts before we try to tackle things with our actions, with our activity. So the idea here is, instead of making a resolution, sometimes choosing your words carefully makes all the difference. So my encouragement last training was to choose a habit, because that represents, to most of us, a long-term mastered behavior. Habits, remember, if we get to the core of what a habit is, it's something that is so ingrained in us that we don't have to think about it. It happens subconsciously. We are really not making decisions anymore. We're just taking action because we're so trained to do it. And so choosing habit over resolution, and that before you can address the behavior, you have to work on your mindset first. You want to begin to create the picture, the vision of your future self. And this is where we want to call on all the senses. So we want to create a picture in our mind of what we look like. We want to start to viscerally, what will it feel like to, let's say, I think the example I used last time was becoming a speaker and overcoming fear of speaking. So what will it feel like to step onto the stage and be confident, and to hold your shoulders back and your chin up high, to close your eyes and feel the spotlight on you, tap into smells and the tastes and the feel and all of that, to really paint this picture for your mind, because that literally is triggering the subconscious mind and telling your mind, this has already happened. This is my reality. So we want to work on the mindset before we work on the behaviors. You have to address both, but we often skip all the thoughts and the beliefs, and we just go straight into hustle and grind and push ourselves through. And that is not sustainable. That's why New Year's resolutions often start to fall off right around the 26th of January, today. All right, so create some other things that become really important as as you are envisioning your future self who has accomplished the goal, who has mastered the habit, who now takes action on the routine. um, Creating some external reminders as well as some internal or intrinsic rewards. So we want to make sure that we have support externally, internally, mentally, physically, all of it. We need to tap into all of those different realms. We want to tap into every single resource that we have access to. All right, so what I'm going to talk about today comes from mostly the research and the book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. I actually just picked up another book that is by BJ Fogg that is called Tiny Habits. So I have a coach and his name is Ben Hardy, and Tiny Habits is one of my assigned books this month. And it's actually, from what I understand, a lot of James Clear's work came from the writing of BJ Fogg. So, but just kind of want to give you some context of where I'm learning this information. And I know a lot of you have read Atomic Habits or are reading Atomic Habits now. Would highly recommend it for anyone and everyone. Doesn't matter what your profession, whether you own a business or work for a business, whether you are at the beginning of your career, end of your career, all of it it's applicable to everyone. So here is what I want to present to you today. So once you have worked on the mindset and the belief, and now you're ready to take action, there's some important things we need to know about what is going on in the brain, and what triggers our behavior, and not just a one-time behavior, but consistent behavior. So once you've mentally decided and committed to the new habit, the new behavior, the new version of yourself, we have to pay attention to what's called the four-step loop of human behavior. All right, and this is this underlies every human behavior that exists. Okay, you can find it in any example of our behaviors that we repeat. And the four-step loop includes step one, a cue, step two, a craving, third, a response, and the fourth step of the loop is a reward. I talk to my clients all the time about the fact that many of us don't feel like we deserve a reward. We feel like, oh, that's a childish thing to need, a gold star, to need a lollipop, to need a pat on the back. But the science tells us that for human behavior to occur and to commit to consistency, that is a integral part of human behavior. And if we take out one of these four components of the loop, we are setting ourselves up for inconsistency, for lack of execution, and for, whether you like the word or not, for failure in achieving your goals. So again, the four-step loop, we have cue, craving, response, and reward. So let me give you a good example of this. You walk into the kitchen every morning, and on the countertop, you see the coffee machine. This applies to those of you that are coffee drinkers. The coffee machine is a cue. Okay, when you look at it, it does one thing and one thing only, and that is produces coffee. When you see that cue, your body literally starts to crave the drink. You start to think about the taste of it. You might think you even smell the coffee before it is brewing because of the visual trigger. You think about how it's going to warm you up when you take that first sip. So the visual cue of seeing the coffee maker, it's sitting there. It might not even have the coffee beans or the water in it yet, but just seeing the coffee machine sets off that second step of craving. Your body starts to crave it mentally and physically. So what happens, the next step, a response. We say to ourselves, I'm going to make a cup of coffee. So we go over and we put in the coffee and we put in the water and we turn on the button We've responded to the visual cue and the physiological craving that has happened. And when the coffee is finished, we doll it up, if you're like me, and you take that first sip, and the parts of your brain that love it, the reward system in there, they light up because they are experiencing the pleasure of the cup of coffee. So that is a demonstration of cue, coffee maker, craving. You literally start to imagine what it's going to taste and smell and feel like. Response, you make a cup of coffee with the required ingredients, and reward, you get to sit there with the warm cup in your hand and you take a sip and you think to yourself, oh my gosh, there's nothing better in the morning than a cup of coffee. So apply this to any other behavior, especially think about habits that exist in your life already, and you pretty easily should be able to see, oh yeah, I see the cue, and now I see what the craving that happens in my body, I know how I respond, and then I experience a reward, and that's why the next day I get up and do it again. So that is the 4-step loop of human behavior. So now that we know what is going on mentally, physiologically, we can use this to our advantage for building new habits, creating new consistent activity. So again, I'm using the language of James Clear. There might be some other experts who use slightly different wording. I know Michael Hyatt just came out with a book on habits. I'm reading Jen Sincero's book that's all about habits. They all kind of have their own label for these steps, but they're all the same. We're just using, it's semantics. So along the lines of atomic habits vocabulary, because we know this 4-step loop, we can now apply it to our advantage. Let's manipulate the cycle here, the loop. So James calls them the 4 laws of behavior change. So with cue, this is when we want to develop a new habit. With cue, we want to make the cue as obvious as possible. So the coffee maker sitting on top of the counter, as soon as you walk in the kitchen, you see it. That cue is very obvious, right? Craving, make it attractive. We want to, I mean, in this example, we don't really even have control over the craving that's happening. It's attractive because we've learned to like coffee. We've learned to make the flavor, 1,000 times before this morning to our liking. Sometimes you have to do a little zhuzhing to make it a positive craving. Response, we want to make it easy. So we want to eliminate as many obstacles as possible, and reward, make it satisfying. So let me give you a different example using the make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it rewarding. Okay. I'm going to use the example that we all have heard and experienced before, which is adopting a new exercise practice. Okay. So let's say the goal is I desire to consistently exercise in the mornings. All right, so how are we going to use the loop, use what we know about brain science to our advantage? Well, we've got to start with cue. How do I make it obvious that in the morning, the first thing I've committed to doing is exercise? That's going to be putting your clothes out right beside your bed. It's going to be having perhaps a picture of an ideal body next to your bed on a bulletin board. We want to create some very, very obvious visual cues for ourselves. Okay. I know for me, I will decide the night before. I'll often do a workout in my basement, and there's a couple of YouTube trainers that I follow, and I will decide the night before which trainer I'm going to follow in the morning and which video of his or hers, so that I can already visualize who's going to be on my screen in the basement when I work out in the morning. So make it obvious. You want to make those decisions ahead of time. It's obvious because you've decided what time you're getting up. It's obvious because the clothes are the first thing you see when you open your eyes. It's obvious because you've already decided exactly what workout you're going to do. So you can picture yourself engaged in that activity before your feet hit the floor. Make it attractive. So this, again, if we're using the example of encouraging ourselves to exercise and work out, how do we make it attractive? Well, you want to start with an activity that you actually enjoy. Don't start with something that you loathe or that's very hard for you. So if you've been a runner in the past and you know you enjoyed running when it was one of your go-tos, then start with running. If the idea of being outside in January is the worst scenario, then go ahead and allow yourself to walk or jog on the treadmill. Maybe you use your exercise time as a time to catch up on a podcast or a television show. So you desire to be on the treadmill because you know you get to catch up on your favorite television show. So make it attractive is what can we do to create some desire to do the new habit, because there's going to be something around us that's making it more enjoyable. The third step then of make it satisfying. So this oftentimes is where we have to, at the beginning, manipulate things a bit more. So we want to make sure, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to make it easy. So the response, we want to make the response extremely easy. So in the book, Atomic Habits, James talks about that you set a goal of walking on the treadmill for 5 minutes. Now, anyone can walk on a treadmill for 5 minutes. Doesn't matter what shape you're in, doesn't matter if you're half asleep, doesn't matter what kind of clothing you're wearing, if you have the right shoes. So make it so easy that it's like, well, of course I can do that. Set the bar low at the beginning, and then you incrementally can increase it. But again, you're not going to say, if you haven't run in 10 years, I'm going to go run 5 miles in the dark, in the cold, the first, morning of my new exercise routine. So make it easy. Choose something you enjoy. It might even be having someone that does it with you, right? I have a running buddy, and there are mornings where if I didn't know that she was waiting for me, I would probably still be in bed. So that's the make it easy. And then step 4, which is the reward, make it satisfying. So create some external reward for yourself. I'll go back to what I said earlier. It does not matter that you are no longer a child. It does not matter if this is day 1000 or day 1 of your new exercise routine. You want to build in reward. Humans need reward. Our brains are wired for acknowledgement. It's part of the loop, right? So how can you choose a reward? Make sure it's in alignment with your goals. So if my goal of exercising has to do with changing my physique, then I'm not going to reward myself with a donut at the end of each workout, right? I might reward myself with my favorite omelet, or again, a hot cup of coffee versus eating, Fruit Loops. Think beyond food as reward for sure. Maybe it's snapping a selfie and posting it and letting your community know that you accomplished something and it's only 7:30 in the morning, right? Get some community feedback and community support. So share your success with others. Do something to give yourself a pat on the back. You might have to think about this one. A lot of my clients will say, I have no idea how I'm going to reward myself. And I have to push them and I have to give them a couple of days to come up with what's the reward. Maybe it's an extra long hot shower in the morning. Maybe it's I'll take a long bath tonight when I get home from work. It doesn't have to be immediate reward. It could be postponed, but make sure there is reward built into your loop, because the next morning, in this instance, when the alarm goes off again at the crack of stupid, you want to already be thinking about the reward, which is going to help you take the first step of getting up and getting moving. So the laws there to review them with you. We take the 4-step loop and we take the laws of behavior change. So for a cue, we make it obvious. For a craving, we make it attractive. For response, we make it easy. And for reward, we make it satisfying. So I would love anyone who has watched up until this point, or if you're on the replay and you have gotten through this training, would love for you in the comments to give us your goal, your objective, your new habit you want to build, your resolution for the year, and break it down. And even if it's not the one you're going to stick with, think about what could be my cue, what could create the craving, what can be my easy response, how do I make it attractive, and then how am I going to reward myself. Love to see you guys once you start getting it out of your mind and onto paper, or you start verbalizing it with someone. You start to see that, oh yeah, I can get creative with this. This can be fun. There are lots of ways to make it easy, make it attractive, make it enjoyable. There are lots of ways to reward myself. I forgot how easy it is to put a smile on my own face. So think about using these 4 steps to commit to and successfully, consistently work on this new habit. Now, I will share with you very quickly, because I don't want this to run too much longer. You can do the inverse of these 4 steps to break an old habit that's no longer serving you. I don't like calling them bad habits because we don't need to label things good and bad, but there are habits we have that are no longer serving us well. Maybe they served us well 5 years ago, maybe they never did, but once you acknowledge, I have a habit that is no longer serving me, how do I break the old habit? You do the opposite. So for the cue, you make it very, very, as much as possible, invisible. Okay, so you want to quit smoking? Keep the cigarettes and the lighters completely out of view at all times. For making it unattractive, force yourself to be outdoors in the cold if you're choosing to smoke a cigarette. Making it hard. Give your family full permission to give you a really hard time every time they see you headed for the garage. Hide your cigarettes so that they're not easy to get to. Don't let yourself comfortably smoke. Make it hard, make it unattractive, make it the visuals invisible. And then with reward, make it unsatisfying. So if you're somebody who used to go smoke a cigarette and then have a cup of coffee because they went together perfectly, don't allow yourself to have the cigarette and smoke afterwards, or excuse me, hand coffee afterwards. So it's creating the opposite effect, okay? Make it invisible, make it unattractive, make it hard, and make it unsatisfying. Now, will that work beautifully, perfectly, easily with a habit such as a nicotine addiction? No, there's still gonna be work, it's still gonna be hard, it's gonna be challenging, but that will help you set you up for more success in breaking the old habit. All right, last thing I want to say here, when you are pursuing a new habit, keep in mind that anytime you can establish the goal as more of an outcome, or excuse me, as more of a lifestyle than an outcome, the more committed you're going to be to it long term. Okay, so you want to think more about like becoming that future version of yourself versus I just checked the box on something. So the difference would be I want to become a fit and healthy athlete who runs 4 days a week versus I want to be able to run a half marathon. You sign up for a half marathon and the day after you could go right back to being a inactive, never run again individual. The goal being more of a lifestyle goal of I want to be an active, fit individual who runs 4 days a week. You can run a half marathon, you can run a 10K, you could eventually run a marathon. You could never run a race and simply be an individual who's fit and healthy and runs 4 days a week. right? But there's no cap on it. So it's not like you're just saying, I got to get to this date, check the box, and then I can go back to doing whatever I want. That's why we often revert, because we accomplish something and then it's like, well, I don't have another goal. So what's the drive? What's the motivation to keep going? Um, so the other thing I want to remind you is not only have the visual cue to take your action, but have some sort of visual tracking tool where you are measuring your consistency, where you're literally coloring in a box or checking off a date on the calendar to show yourself the progress you're making. We want to, 10 days in, 30 days in, 60 days in, we want to be able to go back and look at the gain, look at the progress. We want to say, I started this routine on January 1st, and now it's January 26th. And look at all the days where I hit the mark, where I took action. It may not be 26 for 26 because the goal is not perfection, but if you have a visual tracking tool that shows you, look, I was active every weekday between the first of the month and the 26th. I did it. I was consistent all during the week and I gave myself the weekends off. That's progress. And then you can make a decision. You want to stick with that? I'm going to give myself Saturday and Sunday as a rest day. Or you can say, okay, next month I'm going to make it 6 days a week. So I'm going to work towards slightly greater progress. So tracking your progress. It's also good to see the days where we don't hit the mark, because it helps us to interpret, what was it? That was a Monday, and my Mondays are always overbooked at work. So it's unrealistic for me to expect to add something else into my Monday. The days we don't accomplish sometimes can be revealing, and then we get to make changes. We get to either say, I give myself a pass on Monday, or we say, I need to realign that day so there is time, energy, and space for this habit. So tracking your progress, the good days and the bad days, is another essential piece of long-term commitment, long-term success, long-term mastery, because it's so easy to forget. It's January 26th. If you asked me, did I exercise the first 3 days of January? I have no idea, but my tracker will tell me, oh yeah, actually I was 3 out of 3. So think about how you can measure your progress, measure your gains, and give yourself the reward every day of checking the box or of not checking the box, and motivating yourself to show up and try again tomorrow. If this is interesting to you, if you want to know more about habits, if you want kind of a personalized plan to support you, so you might know what your goal is and you might know what habit you want to build, but you're still not sure that you can master the cue and the craving and the response and the reward, let's talk. I love designing this with my clients. I love supporting my clients with it. I love seeing the gain that they make, being a part of any problem solving that has to be made along the way, because sometimes the plan from day one doesn't quite work and we have to manipulate the reward or we have to change the cues. But I love being alongside my clients for this process. So please reach out if this is something you want support with. If you already have an accountability partner and you want me to just give you a little extra outside perspective on how to strengthen the loop for you, reach out. Would love to do that with you. Let me know. Let me know what other topics you would like for me to be training on this year. February, we're going to be diving into systems, how systems apply to your personal life, professional life, how to implement systems in your business, all things systems. So look forward to seeing you back here in 2 weeks. And in the meantime, share this with anyone that you think will benefit from it. If they're not a member of the group yet, invite them to join Peak Productivity for High Performers. And in the meantime, I will see you in the feed with some daily posts, and would love as much engagement as you guys can provide. So make it a great rest of your day, great rest of your week, and here's to a productive rest of your day. Take care, everybody.